Hey, what's up? This is Jerad, and I am back from NAB 2019, and I wanted to talk about 5 things that I think were pretty cool that I saw at NAB. Now, this this list was really hard to put together because as I made my way through the NAB show floor, I discovered new things. I discovered what I thought would be a great thing, and it was, but then I would find something better at another booth. NAB is definitely just a information overload and a overload of the senses as well, because there's just so much there. There's so much to see. There's so many people to talk to, and there's so many new products being released. Now, one of the things that I noticed is just a ton of lighting equipment. There's a lot of things that are changing in the realm of lighting. Obviously, with LED lighting getting more inexpensive, affordable, there's a lot of companies coming out with new solutions, trying to differentiate themselves. New companies are jumping in. Companies that have been around for a while are producing new products. And so there was just a ton of stuff on display. But now that I have made it home, and the time that I'm recording this, which is Thursday afternoon, NAB is wrapping up. I believe the trade show floor is wrapping up today. And so a lot of people are going to be putting out their thoughts on, what they saw. I know some people have been doing recaps on the daily, which has been cool as well. But for me, I think there are 5 things that I identified as stuff that I definitely want to get my hands on, that I want to spend some time with. So let's jump right into what those things are. So number 1 is Deity microphones. Deity microphones, I've seen their microphones around. I use a lot of Rode mics, and I definitely have an issue with my Rode mics that I'll talk about, and how my Rode mics failed me at NAB this year, which is why I'm back in the studio recording my video as opposed to recording it on site at NAB. But Deity microphones have kind of set themselves apart by creating something really unique and different as far as their shotgun microphones. But what I'm most excited about is this 2-channel Deity Connect system. I do a lot of interviews, a lot of setups where I have to microphone 1 or 2 people. A lot of times with 2 people, I have to use a splitter on my camera, and then that means taking 2 channels and kind of filtering it down into 1 channel, which is kind of a bummer. It's not the best way to do it. It's not the way that I prefer to do it, but in situations where I need to travel light and I don't have a bunch of equipment with me because I have to travel light, I tend to have to make sacrifices. But with the Deity Connect dual channel wireless system, you're actually able to connect 2 wireless packs with a lapel on your subject. So maybe you have the interviewer and the interviewee. You can now mic both of them up. The transmitter or the receiver that goes on your actual camera, you can make changes to your transmitters. So with most wireless packs up until now, you have to make your adjustments on the wireless pack itself. Maybe you want to make an adjustment to the output volume, the transmission volume that comes into the camera. There are things that you have to switch on the actual individual. So it's very hard to make those changes on camera. You're listening through your camera, you're making changes, going back and forth, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. Well, now you can change all of that stuff right on the actual receiver that goes on your camera. You can control the inputs, all of that stuff. And I think that that's just kind of a game changer for somebody like me who doesn't want to carry multiple transmitters and receivers. They just want 1 receiver that kind of does it all, that takes those signals and just puts it right into your audio file. That's why I plug straight into my camera, so that audio comes in and is part of the same video file. It saves me time when syncing up audio later, and I think it's just a fantastic product. I was able to play with it a little bit. Definitely visited their booth multiple times, and just fell more and more in love with that product as time went on and I spent more time with it. So I'm super excited for that to come out. I'll definitely be using that when I'm out in the field on the job doing interviews in the future. So real briefly, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but my Rode mics did fail me. Now, NAB is a huge mixed bag of signals. Every single booth is putting off some sort of signal. There are other wireless microphone companies with signals. There are wireless video signals. There's internet and Wi-Fi going all over the place, not to mention thousands and thousands of cell phones trying to connect to it all. So it is probably the most difficult place to actually have a wireless system on your camera. I wanted to do a walk and talk straight through the showroom floor, which I thought would have been fun, but there was just so much interference and stuff going on that my Rode wireless system failed me. Most wireless systems are going to fail unless they're a higher end wireless system, which is probably something that I need to invest in the near future. Number 2 is Aperture Lights. Now, Aperture Lights have been around for a while. They are pretty well known. You'll see a lot of other creators on YouTube talking about Aperture Lights. They've done a very good job of working and positioning themselves with influencers and people like that, so you hear about them a lot. I have a few smaller Aperture Lights, mainly just battery-powered travel stuff that I use all the time. They're absolutely fantastic and resilient. They charge fast, and they just work when you need them to. But I was invited to go to their dinner that they had after one of the evenings of NAB, and they debuted a lot of new, really cool stuff to everybody that was at this dinner. Now, this dinner had a lot of creators, a lot of influencers and stuff at it, and what was cool about it is that they just debuted what basically the next generation of options that their products are going to have, which was just a ton of fun. Now, one of the big things this year is special effects with lighting. You know, when you think of lighting for video or photography, you're thinking about white lights. You know, maybe they are bicolor so that you can adjust your color temperature, and that's pretty much it. But these days, now everything is RGB or WRGB, and so you're getting the full spectrum of white, but you're also getting RGB in them as well. And so a lot of special effects are being added into these lights. Not special effects like making them flash or do anything like that, but actually color effects and lots of really interesting things that I think are going to make it fun and interesting to use lighting in new and unique ways, where typically we would have to gel lights, we would have to trigger them with things like DMX controllers and all sorts of different things that we would have to do that are just too challenging for most situations. But they got up and they started talking about all of the lights that they have and how they're all going to be connected to smartphones and how you can change the color on pretty much everything. You can use a color picker on the phone to change your lights. You can actually use the camera to take a picture. There's a creator, her name is Kitty, and she's with Atola Visuals, I believe. And she has like some purple in her hair. They took the camera and tapped on the color of her hair, and it changed the lights in the room to that color, which was just like so cool. I mean, I'm used to being able to do something like that with my iPhone when like picking a color for maybe a little graphic design piece or something like that. But actually being able to control lighting with something that works like that was just really cool. So I'm thinking about different ways that I can use that lighting to just do really cool things to make my studio here more interesting, maybe get away from the green screen that I typically sit in front of and just try different things. Aperture Lights definitely announced some really cool stuff that sets them apart from pretty much all the other lighting companies that were there, which also had some cool things, but didn't necessarily have all of this added layer of customization. I mean, they have some smaller lights that they just released that actually all pair together. Their lighting now works in this form of a Bluetooth mesh network. So lights are connected to other lights and they create their own network so that it's easy for you to make changes to them from your smartphone. No more having to like choose the Wi-Fi network and then connect to one light and then choose the Wi-Fi network and connect to another one, or Bluetooth pairing options that just don't really work too well. I mean, it's the latest and greatest in technology being put into lights. And I think that this is really going to just transform the way that those of us that use lighting for different creative aspects, whether it be for YouTube videos or films or whatever, it's going to change the way that we interact with our lighting. And that's going to change the way that a lot of our work looks because we're going to have more options. And that's just great. So number 3 is the Zhiyun Crane 3 Lab. I'm trying to say the name of the company as best. A lot of people say Zhiyun or Zune. It's a challenge to say the name of that company, but whatever it is, they make some fantastic gimbals. Now, I've had the Crane 2 before, and the Crane 3 kind of looked interesting to me when it came out. I was just like, oh, that's weird with that handle coming out the back. It seems like it would be kind of in the way, or maybe just a weird situation. But then I started playing with the Crane 3 Lab Edition, and they had it there with 2 motors on the front, a focus motor and a zoom motor, and there's controls for that on the Crane, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is just game changing. I mean, I have rigged up my Ronin S to do that, to actually take the focus motor and move it over for zoom so that I can do these cool like push-in zoom effects with motion and try to get as much motion out of the gimbal as I can without making the footage look jerky or weird or something like that. And so with the Zhiyun Crane 3 or the Zhiyun Crane 3 Lab Edition, with the focus motors and stuff on there, it really takes creativity to a whole new level. One of the things that I have noticed, and I took the one that they had there, I put it totally out of balance and took the time just to kind of set it up and balance the camera again. It's so much faster and easier, I've found, on their gimbals, especially their later generation or more recent generation gimbals, to balance them out than some of these other gimbals. Balancing a gimbal is important because if they're out of balance, it's going to waste the battery a lot faster. You're not going to get the longevity out of the device that you should. But it just seems like they're a little bit easier to balance for whatever reason. On top of that, they're extremely light. Some of the features that are in this new edition, I think, are just extremely useful. It's stuff that you have to buy a lot of extra add-ons, and you have to like spend a lot of extra money with these other manufacturers. And they somehow have managed to just keep their pricing relatively great. It's some of the items I don't necessarily know the prices on. I still have to kind of piece all of that out. So I'll make sure to link to that down in the description below so that you could check it out. But that package is just, it's absolutely something that I need to get my hands on. Last week, prior to NAB, I was filming all week, and I used my Ronin S, which the Ronin S, when you set it up in a way that's comfortable, is actually really heavy. It's not easy to, I mean, it is easy to set down if you put the foot on it, but if you have it all rigged up to be useful, sometimes it's off balance a little bit. It's hard to hold. It gets heavier on one side. And so, having the typical gimbal with the wide arms is a little much for me these days, and the gimbal that's just like a single stick or single, bar coming down, handle coming down, is a little bit challenging as well. What I like about the Zhiyun is that you can also hold that, you can put that upright bar up against your chest for an additional point of contact, and then hold on to onto the front of it as well. You control your focus or zoom if you don't have the motors. There's just so many options there. And with that extra point of contact, I can hold on to it. I can, adjust my zoom here if I have the motor on it, make changes. It's got the thumb control position really well. I just really felt more comfortable with that Crane 3 Lab Edition than I have with others in the past. And so it's absolutely something that I'm going to need to get my hands on and spend more time with. So you most likely will see a review about that from me coming soon as I have some time to spend with one. Number 4 is the Nite Ize Mix Wand 18. Now, Nite is a lighting company that I'd heard of before, but I didn't really have any experience with. So I spent some time at their booth. They definitely are a lighting company in the sense of, they produce a lot of LED lighting. They're a competitor to Aperture, who I mentioned earlier. But they had this lighting wand that you can hold, and it was fully programmable and customizable. And I instantly thought about the ice light that came out a while ago from Westcott that I absolutely loved, because it was just a simple way to light something. It had a handle. You can hold it up and light a subject really easily. But what I didn't like about the ice light is that you had to gel it if you wanted to change the color temperature. It was just really kind of a single use, not a super practical device, and it was rather expensive. So with the wand that I saw at NAB, I instantly thought of all of the things that I could be doing with that, including light painting. I mean, there's just so many opportunities there with that wand because it has the full WRGB spectrum. It's programmable. It, you know, had all the cool special effects that most of the other lights on display. It was extremely bright. The battery life was really good, and the price was just out of the park that they mentioned to me. But I am going to go and do my research and make sure that it's the same price that is available for sale online, because a lot of these companies, there's a little bit of a language barrier. Some of them come from overseas and they're a little hard to understand. They say something and then you talk to somebody else and that person says something else. So I have my experiences, but I want to make sure the pricing and all of that stuff is correct. So make sure to check out the links in the description, because that will have the correct pricing. But as far as a light that you can just easily pack away, pull out, use to light pretty much any situation, I think that wand is great because it's got a built-in handle. I mean, worst case scenario, you grab somebody, have them be your light stand, or have them light the situation. You can move it around, you can grip it off on a stand or something like that. It's very easy to use. Absolutely a pretty cool product. And the reason that I'm mentioning it and not just putting it in with the Aperture announcement that I talked about as the number 2 thing, is that it's different. And Aperture didn't have a light like that. They have lights that do that, but they didn't have a light with a handle and just in that easy package. So I wanted to mention that because that's something that I'm definitely going to be taking with me and using, because interview light setups would be great. Just boom, set it up. Then there's always those situations where the lighting wasn't how you expected, and boom, with the handle, just really easy and super practical. And the battery life is great, and I think that's all that I have to say about that one. Now, number 5 is something that I saw making its way around the NAB show floor. They weren't there officially with a booth or anything like that, but I got to meet the team behind the product. We actually had breakfast together as a group. I got to hold it. I got to spend a little bit of time with it. I don't have any B-roll of me using it because that was the day that I decided not to bring my camera with me. But the SwitchPod was on display, and Pat Flynn and Caleb, I'm not going to butcher his last name, was there. I got to meet both of them, and it was absolutely just really cool to spend some time with that product. And the SwitchPod was something that I was like really excited about at the beginning, and then you know that cool factor kind of wore off, because I'm like, yeah, but is there that much more of a function for the product besides what I already have, which would be, you know, like the Gorilla Pod or whatnot, or any other little tripod that I can angle out and hold on to. But when you get your hands on it, when you play with it, you flip it around, you set it down, it's just a better solution. It's not that you can't do what it does with another product, it's just a better solution for how people are using it. The Gorilla Pod was not designed to be held that way. It was meant to be wrapped around something. The Gorilla Pod being used as like a vlogging handle, that was something that wasn't ever thought about when the whoever designed the Gorilla Pod designed it. But with the SwitchPod, it was designed with that in mind, with the vlogging mindset or the selfie or whatnot. They had it there with a good-sized camera on it, a mid-sized camera, and then Pat Flynn himself was walking around like with a small kind of like GoPro setup. So they had the full spectrum there. You can easily mount a phone on it, but what's great about it is that you could just flip out the legs and it just stands right up. Whereas with a Gorilla Pod, especially if you have a little bit heavier of a payload, it starts to kind of like slowly tip over, and then you come back 5 minutes later and your camera's on its side or it fell over. It's either designed to just hold on to the legs altogether so it has enough rigidity to keep itself upright, or you just set the whole thing down. There's really no way to stand it up, and then you're setting the camera on its side. With a SwitchPod, you don't have to do that. SwitchPod is, you know, reasonably priced, and of course the Kickstarter campaign was an absolute success. I'm glad that I backed it and chose to get 2 of them, because I think I will definitely be using them, especially since I got to get my hands on one and spend a little bit of time with it. So I'm excited about that. So that's going to do it for my recap of kind of the top 5 things that I saw and got to play with at NAB. There was just so many opportunities for great networking. I met some amazing people that I hope I get to collaborate with later. I worked and met with a lot of companies that I hope to work with, and made a lot of great contacts there. And so it was well worth going, and it was an absolute great time. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm sure you are following along with NAB announcements and all of that. If you were either at NAB or you were following along, what were some things that you saw released that you're excited about? I'd love for you to let me know what those are down in the comment section below. And for those of you that are on the channel and have gotten a little tired of me only talking about Sony stuff, I have some great announcements coming up in working with Canon and Nikon, and I'm going to be a little bit more across the board rather than just focusing on the gear that I have only. So I'm super excited to be able to share more about just the broad range of gear that is out there and that's available, rather than just focusing on what I'm currently using personally. And just having that option to have that experience and actually do more work with other equipment that's coming out, so that I can always have a good grasp of what's available and how to use it. So with that said, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I hope to see you back in the next one. Take care.